So, I'm 15 years old, very anti-South African music in particular, very anti-South Africa. I just couldn't wait. My plan was set, since I was 12, I was going to be a nurse, okay? And then I was going to leave the country. That was it, because the state of the country at that time, with the censorship and the draconian laws, I wanted to rebel, but I'm also very, very obedient. So the way that I rebelled was with music. So I was very extrovert at school, I had a big crowd, you know, we were very nice and together. I mean, in matric, I was 16. I turned 16 in standard 9, and then half of matric, I was 16. And when I would go home, I would withdraw. So with a big family, I'd go home, sit in my music, either on headphones or I had a little speaker concoction. Now, ultimately, my dream job would have been a musician, but I realized I can't sing. Well, I could sing for the choir, but I certainly haven't got a solo voice. And I couldn't do any music. I tried. Alfie, my brother, had a guitar. Couldn't do it. My fingers were too sore. So then I thought, hang on a minute. I can play the music. That's it. I'm a fan. So that was my destiny. So nursing was my second choice, because I would never say out loud that I wanted to be a DJ and I wanted to have music as my career, because the two things that I thought, the two career options, were just null and void for me. Speaking of void. In matric, in 1983, listening to the Top 20 with David Gresham on Springbok Radio, I heard a song that was going to change my life, and it was called Shadows. Now, I remember, I can't remember who it was in the group, but I remember we discussed this, because we would all, like on a Monday morning or the weekend, like, we wouldn't talk about it on the phone because there wasn't a phone. So we'd have to wait and say, oh, did you hear this one? Did you hear that one's number one? And did you hear this? And I said, I had a very funny song, and I think it was called Shadows, but I don't know who it's by. You know, I was very in the new romantic thing. And then somebody says, oh, that's a local band. And I point blank refused to believe that it was a local band. I did not like South African music. It was eVoid. And when I started warming to I thought, well, even though it's not a British band, because I was very anti like the American music as well, I realized that this song got me, it spoke to me. Cue 1984, which was my first year out of school, still 16. First month that I was up in Joburg in nursing hostel, one friend says, oh, her boyfriend's going to see eVoid at the Chelsea. Now, first of all, I was a little bit scared because I wasn't allowed in the pubs. I mean, I wasn't even allowed in at the end of matric into the end of year bar thing. But on the other hand, I thought, seeing them live? So off I was. There we were, Nikki, Margaret, myself, and their boyfriend and the sister. And it was like they hypnotized me. I don't know what happened, but seeing them live was a new dimension. So I liked their song, the eVoid song, but all of a sudden it was, I am a Fadget and Taxi Man. And it was just something that spoke to some part of me. And that started not the best behavior at times, because sorry Eric, I did actually stalk him, and I told him. And I would, because we all lived in Berea at the time, you know, and I had nursing, so I had shifts where I was off during the day, I would bump into him. First time was an accident. That's when I realized, oh, he must live near here. And of course, I found him. We didn't have Google at that time. So I have ways and means, and I didn't know I could be so enterprising. I should have been a private investigator. Again, I digress. So this started this love affair. Anytime I was off on a Friday or a Saturday night, which meant that night shifts were out, obviously, and the 7/7 shifts were out, I would try to get to see this band as much as I possibly could, because when they were live, they did something to me. I also got talking to the sound mixer, and at the time I didn't know what that was, you know, the front of house sound. And lo and behold, I thought, I could be a roadie. But here I was doing my dream job of being a nursing, or was it? So through the years, that year they played at Raffles, I followed them. In December, they'd kind of announced that they were going to leave the country, and I'm going, I can't really blame them, but on the other hand, what am I going to do for live entertainment? So even though I was watching Elemental and Petit Cheval and all the other, by this time now I was a South African music convert, I'm going, but this was my band, this was my drug, this was my music of choice. So I followed them by train down to Durban because they were doing a gig there. And consequently, I couldn't get the shifts and I couldn't get leave because in that stage, when you worked for the hospital, they told you when you were on leave, and my leave was only going to be in February. And just cut long story short, I ended up leaving nursing with 24 hours notice, indirectly because I went to this concert down in Durban, and then I was at odds, I didn't know what to do. Then along came Concert in the Park, which just confirmed my love for music, especially live music, especially of that time. It was just so passionate. All these crowds, it was a phenomenon that had never been seen before in South Africa. This multicultural, multiracial crowd, thousands and thousands. I think it was like 80,000 strong, but that was the official number that was allowed in. And it was just dope everywhere. That concert just set my stage, and by this time, I don't know when it was, I wish I'd kept a better sequence of events, but I ended up getting a job in SABC doing sound. So I wasn't necessarily a band roadie, but I was doing outside broadcasts, which meant I could film all these things. But by this time, eVoid left the country. Now I found out that they were called up. One of the guys, two of the guys were called up. And, you know, to serve against a regime that they didn't believe in, it made sense for them to go over to London. Okay, and besides, I was going to join them, although I no longer had the nursing background. In 2014, this is now 13 years later, because my first year out of school was in 1984, they announced they were going to do a reunion tour. And this I heard on the radio, and it was like the best news ever. I'd heard that they'd played a couple of gigs, and at one stage they did come back and do one gig, but I kind of had, oh no, I was this cocky young sound engineer who could find fault with this and with that, like me finding fault. I, in 2014, had said to my lady who was giving me a massage, I said, I want to go and see them in London. And it blurted out on the massage table, and she said, why don't you go? And I says, well, you know, I don't. She says, I'll give you the money. And when she said she'll give me the money, all of a sudden I thought, what? Why not? Why not go to London? So off I went for a couple of days, and I had the teenage fantasy dream that you cannot possibly imagine come true. I was given an audience with Eric and Lucy and the two brothers in London in front of the old Springbok bar, and then I watched them do a session gig. It was my dream come true. Now, the sequence of events was quite funny because I had made contact with a cameraman friend of mine who's now living in London, who lived near the gig venue where they were going, the eVoid were going to be playing, and he also agreed to film for me. Now, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to film. I mean, like, I'm a soundie. I'd never done production. It was so, but I just knew I had to document this. I had to somehow visually document this. So originally it was going to be a book project, and then it was going to be a video project, and it's still no project at this stage. But the guys agreed to have an audience with me. Moi. Little old me. I was beyond excited. Blabbed all over their interview. But they were so nice and accommodating, and you know, I was just so taken by this. It was like literally like I was hypnotized again. Went to their gig in London and ended up following them around to 4 different gigs in South Africa, flew down to Cape Town. That's how much they meant to me at that time. And I still, because I'm psychologically interested, I wanted to know why? What was it about them in particular? And it's not, I never listened to their CD. Sorry, I never listened to their CD. I love it when I hear it on the radio, but it's not a CD I will sit and listen to. But when they play live, it's like those hypnotists call people up to the stage. I'm just immediately called. And I always like the one position. I like to be under Eric's nose, which was at the Chelsea. It was on my right, so it was their stage left. I was under his nose, Lucian was to the left, and Wayne, the drummer, was at the back. That was my place. And somehow, I don't know how, I mean, I'm quite tall. I felt sorry for well, I didn't feel sorry because I would have moved, but the short shits behind me couldn't see. I'm standing there, but I just danced. And I didn't drink, but I always looked drunk. And the same thing, I went to this pub by myself in London. I went to this bar by myself, and I was there early because I was so super excited. Now, I didn't have the professional camera for that. I just had my little dinky toy, which of course the sound didn't work, but I managed to get some nice pictures. And I just wanted to see how different was this audience in London, which were obviously all South Africans, compared to the South African audiences that I was yet to see, because this was like a rehearsal gig that they had at this Putney. What was the pub's name? Can't remember. Anyway, so I wanted to see the difference in audience, because is it only me that gets compelled to get on a plane and go and travel to see this band? No, because hundreds of people travelled from around, maybe England, maybe not Scotland, but to come and see this band play. And when they got off the plane, at Oliver Tambo Airport, I went to meet them. Yes, just to welcome them. I know, I sound like a really crazy person, but if you haven't figured out I'm crazy by now, then, you know. So I was at the airport, I gave them a copy of Concert in the Park because they didn't have the DVD, welcomed them. I just thought, you know, these were my heroes. The least I can do is travel 50 k's round to the airport, get a few pictures taken and travel back. I mean, wouldn't you? Yeah, of course you would. So anyway, that night, they obviously had a rehearsal and they had to go and do the sound check and everything, and I think they only played 2 days later, and their whole family had welcomed me in that night at the concert at the Empress, because I booked a hotel, I'm not going to drive home, and a friend, Heath, came up from Brunigan, and we had a really lovely teenager chinwag get together, and we had a meal, and then after the concert, we ended up sitting with the Windrich family, which were so gracious in letting us sit at the table. And by this time, I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Heath, of course, was all wide. I'm still wide-eyed as well. But I'm thinking, at the end of the day, they were so gracious, as pop stars go, to let this Fadget intrude in their personal space. Because basically, that's what I was doing. I was intruding. Yes, I'm supporting it. But, you know, they were so gracious. I talked for a long time to their sister, and I talked to her husband, and he was he's not an outsider by any means, but he'd never seen the music phenomenon. So he was in the audience, watching the audience, which were now all middle-aged, Fadgets, because we were all fat, doing shadows, you know, it was a phenomenon to itself. And then, of course, the next morning, I was sitting at breakfast, and in walks Eric, and he comes and sits with me at breakfast. I mean, really, this is like a teenager's fantasy again. I can't reiterate enough how incredibly special this was. 6 years later, I have done diddly squat with the video. I mean, as you can see, I'm playing the scenes back. I do know that there's a story. I'm still busy formulating it, and who knows with these skits. But this musical journey of mine, music has been so important in my life. I'd forgotten for the long part how much it served me in ways that I can't actually put in words. But eVoid was a catalyst for something that really did touch something within me. And to be compelled to, at the age, well, it was 6 years, it was like, I wasn't quite 50, but I was close, get on a plane, go across, spend quality time with these heroes of my young world, my young music world, was just, it's just the best thing, and I will be forever in awe, but also grateful for all of them, the family, the music. Not only did they make an imprint on me musically, because then I thought, well, stop peeing on your own backyard, so to speak. You know, the local music, there's some really good talent there, but I was, again, very, like the patriarchal kind of feeling. It was like, no, don't listen to local music. Meanwhile, there's phenomenal talent. So that's my eVoid story.